This is the Orange RXT 6-channel 2.4 GHz transmitter. As you can see, it's translucent orange in colour and should come as no surprise that it's actually called the Orange RXT 6-channel 2.4 GHz transmitter. This is the chaotic quad that flies with this transmitter. No, it's not crazy or has a personality disorder, but that's what it's called. As you can see, it's big, average looking, some might say even ugly. It weighs almost 700 grams with the battery, so it's no lightweight. But hey, it flies 3D, not FPV, and has reverse thrust. I'm kidding, right? No, I'm not. Stay tuned, it's coming right up. Hey guys, this is Rick. Welcome to another episode of Rick Chat RC. Today I've got a drone that's going to defy logic. It's something I've never seen before, and I'm sure most of you probably haven't seen anything like this before either. You saw a little bit of it in my pre-intro. Well, without further ado, here it is. Coming at ya! This is the Hobby King Quantum 3D Chaotic Quad. How's that for a mouthful? Is that name long enough or what? The Hobby King Quantum 3D Chaotic Quad. Now, this is much bigger and much heavier than your normal quad. It's not a racing quad, it's more of a freestyle quad, that's for sure. It's not FPV, but you can make it FPV later on. Now, just by looking at it, I can tell you now, I didn't buy it because of its looks. I bought it because of its features. And one of its main features for me is its ability to fly 3D. Now, you're all familiar with the stabilization mode and the acro mode. Well, this has a third mode called Mad Cow 3D. How's that for a crazy name? Mad Cow 3D. That's why they call it a chaotic quad. So when this is in 3D mode, you can fly upside down and you can perform 3D maneuvers. So how does it do it? Well, I'll tell you now, it doesn't do it because of the propellers. There is no variable pitch on these propellers. So the only other way this baby can perform those maneuvers is for the motors to go in reverse. So they move instantly forward and then they move instantly in reverse to give you what you need if you're flying 3D maneuvers. The purists would say, why would you bother? I can hear them already. Well, you know what? Don't bother if you're not interested. There's more for us. There's more for the rest of us. As far as I'm concerned, this is an excellent training machine if you want to learn to fly 3D. Now, for those that know me, I love my helis and I've been flying for a number of years. I've done some heli reviews and I'm actually practicing 3D at the moment. And I decided that this is an excellent machine for doing that on. I'm practicing my 3D flying on a quad. It's much less expensive to repair one of these if you crash into the ground or lose it or whatever than if you lose and crash a heli into the ground. Trust me, I've had my fair share of both. Now, the other thing is this baby comes very well packaged in a foam box. It sits neatly inside the box with the transmitter and it's secure for transportation. Nothing will happen to it until you take it out. The only thing is the propellers are not installed when it's in the box. So you have to take it out of the box, install the propellers, go flying. When you finish flying, if you want to put it back in the box, you have to undo the nuts, take the propellers off, and put it back in the box like so. Apart from that, a very minor point. Before we get to the good stuff, I'll quickly run through the user guide for you. Here it is. Quite a comprehensive little manual. Don't throw this one away. You will probably need it in future. Got all the usual pieces. Features and specifications, warnings and disclaimers, safety precautions, that's all normal. It's got set up for the plug and fly version, as you can see. A few more pages on the plug and fly version. Bit of a mouthful, isn't it? It's got set up for the ready to fly version, which is the one I've got. As you can see, it comes with full colour photos and diagrams. It's got flying the quad, all the flight modes are all about. We haven't skimped anywhere, I must say. It's quite a detailed little user guide. There's a troubleshooting section, an appendix section. Talks about the Mad Cow 3D flight controller, how to set it up. So you won't be lost if you have to start again, if you have to reconfigure. This little manual has everything you need to make sure you get it done right. It's even got a recommended products page. It's a pretty good manual. Keep it by your side. Don't throw it away. This is one to keep, definitely. Okay, so before we move on to the quad, let's start by having a look at the transmitter that comes with this drone. So this is the Orange RX TX 2.4 GHz 6-channel transmitter. It's mode 1 because I'm a mode 1 flyer, and it looks like a Spectrum TX, doesn't it? I should know, I've got a Spectrum TX also. If we start by looking at the top, it's got all the relevant switches. It's got the throttle cut switch, it's got the trainer switch. Trainer switch is used for setting the timer so you know how long to fly before you have to land. It's got the throttle cut and it's got the arm and disarm switch, which is the F mode gear switch I've just flicked there. On the front top, you've got on the right hand side the dual rates for aileron and rudder. Then on the left hand side, you've got the dual rates for the elevator and the flap. Now that's actually a 3-position switch there, which I've just flicked. That's how you control the stabilization mode, the acro mode, and the good old Mad Cow 3D mode. This is what it looks like when you switch on the transmitter. It has to be in acro mode when you switch it on. It's a very nice transmitter, I must say. Orange, translucent in colour. I'd feel right at home with it, and it feels good in the hands. I'm just going to switch it around and show you the back so you can see what it runs on. It only actually takes, as a minimum, 4 AA batteries, 6 volts, which is pretty good. I've got some energizers in there, so it runs pretty well. You get a lot of flying time. You're not going to run out of battery power in a hurry with this one. It's exactly what I use on my Spectrum TX also. So yeah, that's the Orange TX transmitter. I mean, it does everything else. It's got fixed wing programming for flaps, P-mixes, Elevon, V-tail, etc. It's got helicopter programming, swash plate type, CCPM. It's multi-copter mode. It's got direct trim access display, adjustable stick lengths, and so on. A really nice transmitter. Okay, so let's move along to the quad in a little bit more detail. So I've already shown you, you've already seen how large it is. I've already told you that it's a bit heavier than normal. Well, size-wise, it's 400mm on the diagonal. And as far as its weight is concerned, without the battery, it's about 627 grams. So once you whack on a LiPo that weighs anywhere from 150 to 200 grams, depending on if it's 3S or 4S, you're well and truly up around the 750, 800 gram mark. But that's not an issue. This quad has power, so it has the power to match its weight. The flight controller is a Mad Cow 3D flight controller. The ESC is an Afro ESC 38 multi-rotor speed controller with Simon K firmware. The motor, or the motors, are 2212 1300 kilovolt brushless motors. So as I said before, these things spin one way, and if you want to fly 3D or fly upside down, they will instantly spin the other way. That's amazing. That's how great these things are. The receiver is an Orange RX, or it's, yeah, an Orange RX R415X receiver with 4 channels. This is the underside of the quad where the battery installation is. Now I have to say the battery installation itself can be a bit fiddly. Sometimes I struggle to put the 4S in place properly, but there is the Velcro there is the Turnigy strap that goes across. Everything does hang together nicely. I've tried to put the battery lying down, as it were, so that the depth doesn't stick out as much. It's a very tight, snug fit if you do it that way, but nevertheless the battery does go in, and just be wary that it's a snug fit and ensure that it's nicely secured before you take off. The last thing you want to do is have the battery come loose as you're flying. And as I said earlier, the LiPo is 3S or 4S. So the recommended pack is 4S at 2200 milliamps, but it will fly comfortably on 3S. I think its performance as far as 3D maneuverability might be a bit lackluster on 3S, but nevertheless, without doing 3D maneuvers, this quad definitely flies on 3S, not a problem. So there you have it, the review of the Hobby King Quantum 3D Chaotic Quad. Now I'm going to tell you a funny story before I go. This is how it happened for me. But before I tell you the story, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about the propellers. Now, the propellers are actually carbon reinforced and they're bidirectional. They also have a DJI slot. So that means when you put them on the shaft, they actually slot into place and they won't spin around the shaft. So they actually lock into place, which is pretty good. So these nuts, they're only there to stop the prop from flying off. The other thing about these props is, apart from being bidirectional, apart from being carbon reinforced, I'm sorry to say, but they're pretty weak. Now, they could be a safety feature, but I think they're pretty weak. When I say safety feature, this is what I mean. If you touch the grass or the ground or the dirt with these propellers, because the quad lands a little bit funny or it takes off a bit on an angle and it scrapes, these props chip and break very, very easily. Now, that could be a safety feature in that it stops any other damage to the motor and they just flick away. But in my opinion, I think the props are just too weak. They might be carbon reinforced, but they just break very easily if something comes in contact with them. Okay, enough said about that. Now, the other day when I was at the park, I was trying to do the flight review and the weather's been pretty ordinary here, so I haven't been able to do it yet. So watch out for it. I plan to have the upload happening in the next few days. But anyway, to continue on with the story. I switched on the quad first and switched on the transmitter. That is a big no-no. This is what happens when you switch on the quad first and then you switch on the transmitter. I armed the quad, all good. As soon as I raised the throttle slightly to get the props moving, it went to almost what I would call takeoff speed. Well, the props started spinning at takeoff speed. And the rear was pushing itself into the ground like that. And the front was lifting like that. But it didn't take off. And I couldn't figure out what had happened. So safety first as always. I took the props off and analysed the motor direction. And then I put the props back on, analysed the motor direction and the thrust direction, and believe it or not, what I realised is this. It can happen to me, which means it can happen to anyone. I put the props on wrong. I had the rear props installed so that they were producing upthrust, forcing the quad to go down like that. Now, I think that almost saved me, because when I switched on the quad first and then I switched on the transmitter, as I said, it was pushing itself into the ground like that. If I had the props installed correctly, I reckon the quad would have taken off, done a forward flip, and that would have been the end of it. Would have gone like that. So, despite all my experience, despite all your experience, I'm going to have to reiterate this as a caution. Please, always switch on your transmitter first. Then switch on the quad. And even before you do that, make sure the thrust direction of your propellers are installed correctly on the appropriate motor. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in all sorts of trouble. So there it is, the review of the Hobby King Quantum 3D Chaotic Quad. So once again, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching. Leave any comments if you wish. Please subscribe if you wish. Your support for the channel is definitely most welcome. I hope you've enjoyed the review, and bye for now.